In the city of the streets did not run across the ground, they drifted above the clouds. Homes were tethered to great, slow-moving air lilies, massive blossom-like platforms that bloomed with helium-rich petals, each rooted in a science long forgotten and a little bit of magic that no one questioned. They were called sky bloomers, and they held entire neighborhoods aloft. Between these floating pods ran slender bridges made of woven glass threads, and through them strolled a people unhurried by time. For when you lived in the sky, time felt less like a river and more like a cloud, always near, always soft, and never rushing. On the soft underside of one such pod lived a girl named Mareya, who wrote letters to no one in particular. Each letter she wrote, she folded into a delicate paper wing and let float upward a strange thing. For in Lyral, gravity didn't always work as expected. The city's lift currents often carried things in reverse. One morning, as Mareya sat with a warm cup of milk steeped in vanilla bark, she found something odd beside her sky window. A folded wing of paper, just like the kind she sent out. But this one was not hers. It was made of a heavier, parchment-like weave, with a silver thread binding its corners. A word was scrawled on it in soft gray ink, remember. She held it to her chest. The pod beneath her shifted ever so slightly, the way a sky bloomer sighs in a breeze. The skies outside were calm, but Mareya knew something had stirred. Something had returned. Asterisk, the city of Lyral had no clocks, no horns, no sharp edges. The pace of life was dictated by the way the pods moved, and they moved only when the wind asked politely. When Mareya walked out of her she passed her neighbors with nods and halves. Everyone wore fabrics that danced with the wind. Hair was rarely combed, but always clean. Shoes were optional. Eye contact was soft and rare, as if to see too deeply would slow time even further. She walked across a thread bridge toward the glider's square, where wind readers gathered with long feathered staffs to sense the moods of the upper air. Each breeze had a signature, they said, a song that only those who listened with stillness could hear. She held the letter close. Remember, it had no return name, no mark, but the thread, it was tied with silver, finely looped, something she hadn't seen since childhood. Her older brother had used such thread in his sky journals. Her breath caught softly. He had disappeared 7 years ago. Not lost, not gone, just drifted away. That's how the sky folk spoke of departures. No one left forever. They simply changed altitude. She had never grieved him, only waited. And now she walked to the lift pedals, soft, translucent leaves that curled upward when stepped upon. They carried her gently to a higher bloom, where the air grew slightly thinner and cooler. She tucked the letter into her satchel and whispered into the breeze, "I'm ready." Somewhere far above, a current shifted. Asterisk, the highest of all the one they called the archive, floated so far above the others that it only touched the main city on solstice winds. It was vast and quiet, with towers made of windglass and inkleaf, materials that held stories like trees held rings. It had no librarians. It had memory tenders, silent, smiling people who wore gloves made of soft metal and could lift a whisper from a page just by touching it. Mareya arrived by pedal glider, her small air wing drifting her up to the central bloom. She showed the letter to the first tenda she met. They held it like one holds a mouth, careful not to crush the wings. They nodded, then turned and led her deeper into the archive. Corridors curved like shells, windows were made of faux glass, filtering sunlight into gold haze. Books hung from vines and shelves floated alongside the walls like lazy birds. Finally, the tender stopped. In a corner alcove sat a book with no title, its cover pulsing gently like a sleeping creature. The tender placed Mareya's letter beside it. The book opened on its own, and a page turned. There, in ink that shimmered like dew on silk, was her name. And beneath it, she will remember him not when she finds his face, but when she hears the place where silence holds his song. Mareya touched the words, and the sky bloomer Hummed. There were no straight paths to the place the archive spoke of. Mareya drifted again, higher, to a place most skyfolk never dared go. The silent verge was a zone of sky so still that sound itself seemed afraid to pass. It hovered above all blooms, a layer of silver mist where time hardly moved. Those who entered always came out changed slower, softer, carrying more sky behind their eyes. She went alone, carried by a lantern wing, a small pod woven from hollow stem and lightwood. She rose in silence. The city faded below. Even the wind, usually a playful presence, watched quietly now. When she passed into the silent verge, she felt it immediately. The quiet wasn't empty. It was full of paused words, held breaths, and long-forgotten lullabies. The lantern wing stopped at the edge of a drifting ring of mist, where no bridges reached. She stepped out, and she heard it, a melody, slow, familiar, played on a sky flute, her brother's song. She followed the notes, which seemed to come not from any one direction, but from every place where stillness touched light. And there he was, sitting on a platform woven of wind glass and memory, his eyes closed, playing into the sky dot. He opened them slowly. I wondered how long it would take for the letter to find you. Asterisk, the skies above Liril had never seemed so vast. Mareya and her brother drifted down from the silent verge in a shared lantern wing, gliding like a leaf through a sky that now held no urgency, only hush. The air was golden lavender, the color of late afternoons that never turned into evenings. Around them, smaller gliders floated in slow arcs, messengers of the wind, and watchers of stillness. No one asked them where they'd been. In Liril, absence wasn't punished, it was honored. When they reached Mareya's bloom, it hummed in recognition, the way a house might exhale when someone finally returns. Her door, a soft fold of sky cloth, opened on its own. Her brother paused at the entrance. Strange, he said, how unchanged it is. She smiled. The bloom doesn't forget. Inside, they sat by the round sky window and watched the upper pods drift overhead like silent whales. Mareya warmed 2 cups of vanilla bark milk and dusted them with petal sugar. The moment felt small but not insignificant, like setting a lantern afloat, knowing it will reach someone someday that they talked more. Now, not in memory but in presence, he told her of the silent verge, how it wasn't a place to escape, but a place to unleash. I had too much noise inside, he said. The verge gave me quiet big enough to hold it. Mareya listened, chin resting on her knees, her breath slow. And now, she asked. He looked out at the open sky. Now I know how to return, not just to the city, to myself. Later, they walked the bridges together. The neighbors nodded, not out of surprise, but as though they'd always expected this moment to arrive. The wind readers raised their feathered staffs in welcome, and one even whistled a tune Mareya hadn't heard since she was small. Her brother turned. You still remember the bridge songs? I remember everything. I fold into the sky, she replied. That night, as soft air curled around the bloom and stars blinked in sky-slow rhythm, Mareya stepped alone to her favorite perch. She took out a sheet of cloud weave paper, crisp and delicate, and began to write, but not a letter this time. A map, not of places, of silences. She drew the arcs of hush where her thoughts slowed, the blooms where she felt her breath, the notes her brother played, the way the verge had sung without sound. Then she folded the paper into a wing and let it go. The wind took it, slowly, reverently, as if it knew it was carrying more than parchment. Behind her, The soft pad of her brother's feet approached. Still sending them, always, she said. The letter spiraled up into the drift layers, where all forgotten things go to be remembered. Below, the city pulsed with the rhythm of still breath. The winds didn't pick up. The air didn't change. But something in Mareya, the quiet in her chest, the curve of her smile, had shifted. She didn't need the sky to return anything. She already held it.